How's it going, my dudes? Welcome back to another video. I'm so excited for pulling Belcidia the other day. There are so many different comps that I want to build and I can do it right now. I can use Quasar, I can use New Year's UL, and there's so many under the radar dark comps that I can play with right now. So for this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we can one-punt with the Belcidia team. Now without further ado, let me explain what this team is all about. So this team relies on Belcidia's HP falling to 50% in order to nuke really hard. So we are going to revolve our strategy around a mechanic which is to lower her own HP, and whenever Belcidia uses her skill, she lowers her own HP as well. So when her HP is lowered, she will then trigger her leader talent, and she will also trigger certain abilities and passives that will further boost her damage. So on her actual nuke itself, that's going to be a lot of damage. So let's check out all the abilities of the units in this team. Number 1, we have Belcidia plus 30% attack for this unit, and ability number 2, while HP for party members below 50%, you add 30% to attack for that unit. And her main, while HP is below 50%, you add 250% to skill damage for this unit. So just from Belcidia herself, when her HP is at 50%, she has 30% extra attack and 250% extra skill damage. Now moving on to Falch, when a battle starts, 25% attack for this unit and deal damage totaling 10% of your own max HP. And when a battle starts, you add 100% to skill gauge for this unit and deal damage totaling to another 10% of your max HP. So what this does is it lowers your HP by 20% immediately, and upon using Belcidia's first skill, you would then be able to trigger all your enmity passives right at the start. Finally, let's check out her armament and her weapon core as well. When this unit is a dark unit, you add 30% to attack for this unit, and while HP is below 60%, you add an additional 70% attack for this unit. And as always, the effect is halved for weapon cores. Now let's move on to unit number 2. Number 1, plus 12% attack to dark units. Number 2, a skill is activated by this unit, you add 20% skill damage to dark units. And it caps off at 60%. And her main, a skill is activated for the first time, you add 100% to skill gauge for your own unit. This is very important, and I'll explain to you why in just a moment. Now we move on to Suzu at the bottom. Her passive number 1, plus 20% to attack for leader. Passive number 2, a skill is activated by this unit. You add 10% to attack for leader, caps out at 40%. Now, her armament, this is really crucial. We will be using the New Year's weapon over here. But if you do not have the New Year's weapon, you need to use a Book of Treaties or a Book of Lies, which are all gacha items. You can do without them, you can opt for something with lower skill gauge at the start, but that would directly lead to a slower Belcidia one-punt. Okay, so for the armament itself, we are not too bothered about the first ability. We are more interested in the second ability, which is when the battle starts, you add 40% to skill gauge for this unit. And then we combo with the weapon core, which is when the battle starts, you add another 20% to skill gauge for this unit. So this unit actually starts off with 60% skill gauge. Now we move on to unit number 3, we have Rebecca first. Ability number 1, plus 20% skill damage to dark units. Ability number 2, you add 8% to damage for dark units when doing damage against foes with slow active. Slow being the debuff. Take note that Rebecca is not even maxed out at all. I think she has quite a few of her abilities not yet upgraded. But moving on to her main, while HP for dark units is below 50%, you add 20% attack to that unit. And now for Shirano, when the battle starts, you add 80% skill gauge for this unit, and ability number 2, a skill is activated by this unit. For the first time, you add 30% skill gauge to all other allied units. This is very important. We'll be equipping ourselves with the story orb called Nurari Hyun, and what it does is you add 10% damage for your allies against foes with debuff active. And as for the armament itself, Rebecca will be using the New Year's weapon as well, which is another 20% skill gauge for this unit. So in conjunction with Shirano, you're going to have 100% at the start. Now we are going to wrap this up really quickly by looking at the skills that they have. I'm only going to talk about the important units here. So Marianne, right, when she shoots a blaster at a beam to the closest target, you inflict dark damage and reduce dark resistance to hit foes. Damage increases with high cost is not important at all, but what's important is that you reduce dark resistance on the enemy. And now moving on to Rebecca, this is quite important. Okay, so she casts a shadow over her surroundings, inflicting dark resistance debuff and Mire on hit foes. So Mire is basically slow, and you increase the skill gauge of all allies by 12%, excluding herself. So together with Shirano, she actually increases the skill gauge of all allies by 42%. And do you remember what's the skill gauge of Marianne? She has 60% from the New Year's weapon and the New Year's weapon core. So with this, when Rebecca uses a skill, Marianne will be at 100%, and Marianne would then be able to trigger this main over here. When the skill is activated, for the first time you add 100% skill gauge to yourself. So you're actually going to double cast your Eradicator over here, and that deploys like a ton of dark resistance debuffs on the boss. But not only that, okay, because do you remember who is the sub to Marianne? What's up, Shasuzu? Okay, so when Shasuzu goes, she adds 30% skill gauge to the leader, and if she goes twice because of Marianne, she will then add 60% skill gauge to the leader. And wait, hold on, when Rebecca moves, she adds 42% skill gauge to the leader as well. So Rebecca plus double of Shasuzu, that's 102%, aka 100%, Belcidia gets to shoot again. So therefore, in simple terms, what you're gonna see is Belcidia goes first, followed by Rebecca, followed by Marianne, and then Marianne again, and then Belcidia. And this always works because Belcidia has a slightly further proximity requirement than Rebecca, so you will never ever encounter a situation where Rebecca uses her skill first, which would then ruin everything. And Belcidia needs to go first in order to lower HP once to do a little bit more damage, and then finish this whole cycle, and then Belcidia becomes a completely savage beast. Okay, I don't want to waste too much of your time. It has already been almost 6 minutes of me explaining here. Let's take a look at some of the runs to see for ourselves how this really works. So we need to get really close because of Fauch as a sub. So Belcidia goes, uses a skill here, then Rebecca goes a little bit closer, uses her skill, Marianne goes, then Belcidia goes again, and then boom boom boom, GG. But take note that even though this comp is really sick, right, it's not exactly foolproof. You will not be able to one-punch everything on your own, but you will still be able to do tremendous amount of damage without downing the boss. So if you take a look at this run over here, Belcidia goes, Rebecca goes, Marianne looks like it's going really well, right? But the thing is, we did not down the boss on time, therefore we did not actually kill the boss, but we still did 3 million damage, which is good to have, especially if your allies do not have some kind of one-punch setup. So even though you are technically casting 5 skills, you're not actually adding 5 to the combo chain, which is why at the start of the video you actually saw us do 2 different kinds of chain combos, and we downed the golem twice as well. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to trigger a chain combo yourself. So this is probably the most powerful one-punch team there is, but it is extremely high cost to build. I mean, the units are hard to come by, and you need tremendous full mana board investment, which requires a ton of T4 dark mats. So to be honest, I think the Elia Mura one-punch team is still the most efficient. It's the easiest to build, you have a lot of free-to-play units to play with, and it still gets the job done anyway. But this is definitely the coolest one-punch team I've ever played with. And huge shout out to XCC and Vivaldi, as well as the other players who offered to sacrifice their time to help me with this lineup over here, and to test out our one-punch with 3 different Belcidias. I'm thankful that it is a huge success, and you're gonna see it one more time. This is great. If you found this long video helpful, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, it really helps the channel. I'll end off the video over here. This has been free to play, by the way, and as always, I will see you in the next video.